You're listening to The Inspire Me Show with hostess Layla Ashley, hypnotherapist, life coach, author, and speaker. The Inspire Me Show is dedicated to bringing passion and inspiration into your life and your relationships. While side effects of listening to this show may include greater feelings of love, joy, and creative inspiration, please note that this show is meant to entertain and inform and is not a replacement for professional help. Learn more at www.laylaashley.com. And now, right here on KPFK, in the spirit of love, empowerment, and freedom, your hostess, Layla Ashley.
Welcome, everyone, to the Inspire Me Show. I'm your hostess, Layla Ashley. And with me in studio today is Carl Totton.
Hi.
Hi, Dr. Carl Totton. Wonderful to have you in studio today.
Great to be here.
I'm very pleased to be sitting here with you and glad that you're here to share your wisdom. So I'll say a bit about this amazing individual before we get into my million questions. Okay. Professor Carl Totton is the founder of the Taoist Institute. He has studied the Chinese healing, spiritual, and martial arts for over 45 years and is licensed as a clinical and educational psychologist. He is certified as both a Reiki master and Qigong and martial arts Grandmaster. He teaches classes in all of the traditional Chinese internal and external martial arts, Qigong, Taoist meditation, Tui Na, the ancient Chinese method of acupressure, massage, and medical Qigong. Dr. Totton has taught at 5 colleges and universities, including 2 schools of traditional Oriental medicine. He is listed in the U.S. Martial Arts Hall of Fame and over 20 volumes of Who's Who biographies. Professor Totton has taught many of the most prominent members of the film, music, and entertainment industries, including A-list celebrities, executives, and athletes. Dr. Totton is the founder of the Core System, which is trademarked, a new method of integrating the ancient roots of the traditional healing, spiritual, and martial arts, and transforming them for contemporary applications.
Wow.
Does that surprise you about yourself, hearing all that? That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, it just means I'm old. I've been around a long time.
Oh, is that what it means?
But
well,
bingo is a good thing.
Yes. Yeah, very amazing background. We have a lot to discuss today, and I'm very excited. So why don't we begin with your background? You have quite an extensive background. Can you give just the highlights and also what inspired you to bring these various areas of interest together into your philosophy of life?
Sure. Well, I was born right here in Los Angeles. I'm a native.
Yay.
And, as a youth, I think a lot of young men get interested in studying a martial art. There's bullies and other things around. And so just for self-protection and also for self-confidence, I really did not like the feeling I would get internally, when confronted by bullies at school or in the neighborhood.
Me neither.
And nobody likes that.
Yeah.
And, of course, it's a major issue these days and always has been.
Yeah.
It's kind of come out of the closet now, and so that's great. We're really addressing that. And so as a teenager, I began studying martial arts. And, I looked around for a teacher, and then just as I was getting ready to go to one school, another school just happened to open up within blocks of where I and my friends lived, and it was exactly what I really wanted to learn, which was Chinese martial arts. Most of the others were, more of the traditional Japanese arts like karate, judo, jiu-jitsu.
Right.
But this school taught Chinese kenpo and kung fu, these brand new, really mysterious types of arts from China. Yeah. And I had a close friend who was born in Hong Kong, and he had studied as a boy. And so when this school opened, we were in heaven. Because, again, we could just walk to it, from our homes. So that's how I got started and just never stopped. It's been, actually, this 2016 will be my 53rd year studying the Chinese martial arts.
Wow.
Now, the interesting thing about them is that they were much more than just martial arts because of the quality of the teachers that I happen to have. Some of my teachers were doctors of traditional Chinese medicine. Some of them, one of them was a priest from a Taoist monastery in China. One of my teachers is a noted scholar in Taoism and has written commentaries on the I Ching, another famous Taoist text.
Yeah.
And so I had extraordinary teachers. I've had almost 25 just martial art type teachers in my career. Not to mention all the other teachers, Reiki and, Ho'oponopono. And,
yeah, we'll get into all that too.
Other spiritual systems.
Yeah.
And so I began this intensive study of martial arts. And for some reason, it just really attracted me, and I just never really wanted to stop. But because of the other information that many of my teachers knew, I became interested in these other practices too. Philosophy, Taoism, Zen, Buddhism, and of course other things that are associated, like ancient Hindu practices, yoga, and other traditional practices from different places within, the so-called Far East.
Were any of these your own personal background, your own family of origin?
No. Not at all.
Interesting.
No, it's just me, just strange me. I became interested in all these strange things.
Just your calling,
obviously it was my calling. And at the same time, of course, my family, I do come from a family of educators. My mother had been a teacher. My father had been a teacher. And actually, both my parents from Oklahoma. My dad actually had been a high school principal at one point. And so they really emphasized education, obviously. My sister is a teacher. My niece is a teacher. We're all educators.
Yeah.
And so at the same time, I began going to college, and I eventually obtained bachelor's and master's degrees in rehabilitation counseling. I spent years working with persons with disabilities, both physical and psychiatric, and then became interested in working with children. And so I became a school counselor and later a school psychologist, and then went back. Whenever I feel I don't know enough, I just go back to school and just keep studying.
Yeah.
So then I went back to school and received a doctorate in clinical psychology from Pepperdine University.
Nice.
So I'm a licensed clinical and educational psychologist in California and see clients in my private practice almost every day.
Wow.
And
busy.
As you mentioned earlier, I've taught at 5 colleges and universities, and I'm currently chair of the Department of School Psychology at Phillips Graduate Institute, actually newly renamed Phillips Graduate University in Chatsworth.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And so pretty much my life involves teaching, practicing, and healing practices. That's what I do. That's who I am, and that's what I do. And along the way, I have gone on some amazing journeys to see some incredible teachers. I call myself all the time the luckiest person in the world because I've studied with many just fabulous, incredible teachers. I've been really blessed.
Yeah. That's great that you've encountered that in your journey just over and over again, and this is your path. So
yes.
That's wonderful.
I've had life readings in the past, and all of them say the same thing, that my job is to be a teacher.
Not that you didn't know that, right?
Yeah, well, I figured it out, but it's been confirmed.
Exactly. That's great.
And so that's what I do. I teach, and I think that we were speaking a little earlier, right now it seems that there's so much conflict and turmoil going on in our country and around the world. And I think if we can, shed a little light, that might point in a more healing direction, I think it brings goodness to the planet.
Definitely. Yes.
And I think that we really are, I've trained with some shamans from various parts of the world, and they all say that our main job is being a steward to the earth, taking care of the mother, taking care of the planet. And right now, we're not doing a terribly good job all around the world.
Yeah.
And so that's another part of my mission, is to see, if some of the things that I have learned, about helping and teaching can help us heal the world. Heal the world on all levels, spiritual, physical, emotional, environmental, ecological, because I think a lot of the things that we're seeing are signs of serious imbalance. Things are out of whack. Things are not in balance.
It's so important because, we have physical catastrophes. And like right now in Southern California, we have a major drought going on.
Yes.
But on other levels, we have, you could say, a spiritual drought, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what you're addressing.
I am calling for nothing less than a new renaissance.
Yes.
I really believe that, if you look throughout periods of human history, when things get really out of balance, the nice thing is that sometimes the seeds of discontent grow into fruits of enlightenment. And we've had, the Enlightenment in the past, and the age of industrialization, and then, of course, more recently, our digital age. And we've had, of course, great Renaissance periods in art, in music, in literature, in poetry. And I think right now we really need a new type of Renaissance in all of those fields. But the big one that I want to see is a coming together of science and spirituality, because I think that ultimately they're both on a search for truth. They just have different sources of evidence for those truths.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's getting closer and closer and closer.
Yeah.
Particularly when you look at quantum mechanics, quantum physics. It sounds almost like Taoism.
Yeah, it does sound a lot like that.
And there are books written called The Tao of Physics and The Dancing Wuli Masters. Books that over the last, 25 or 30 years have recognized the commonalities between the Taoist spiritual path and the interconnected relationships that quantum mechanics recognizes as well. Mm-hmm. And so I see this as being entirely possible right now. And that excites me to no end.
That's great. And it's interesting because an image that comes to mind as you're talking about this is the two sides of the brain, which,
yes.
One is maybe scientific, the other is more artistic and spiritual. And, we have the right and the left side. And it's almost like a coming together into a whole brain.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I often say to people that, we're all bipolar in a way because we have this right brain and the left brain. And very often they seem to operate independently of each other, which results in splitting.
Right.
And that's not the only way the brain is split. It's split, right and left. Yeah, everybody knows about that. But also forebrain and hindbrain and rat brain and reptilian brain and low brain, high brain. We're split all over the place in so many different directions. After a while, a lot of people don't know who they are.
Yeah, multi-personalities right there.
Exactly. And again, we all have some of that. It's just that how severe and extreme is it, and is it working? Is it functional? We can't. We live in a 3D environment, a 3D planet, a 3D universe right now. We kind of define ourselves to some extent through polarization. And there's lessons to be learned from that. I think eventually, as we mature and become hopefully a little wiser, we move away from that. But that's part of our learning process right now. I always tell people that as a psychologist, the easiest way to change is not to try to get rid of who you are and even some of the things that are more troubling about you. Rather, improve the parts of yourself that are functioning well and build that up. And automatically, the things that are less integrated will begin to lose their power, their grip on you.
Almost like an atrophy.
Yeah.
In a good way.
And it's like a scale. As one goes up, the other just goes naturally down. Right. That way you don't have to take parts of yourself and say, I hate this part of myself. I don't like this part of myself. And try to kill it, get rid of it.
Try to burn it.
Kind of like Western allopathic medicine approaches. What do we try to do? Is there something wrong? We got to kill that part of it. We need to, medicate it and kill it and get rid of it. Right. Whereas more holistic approaches to health and healing really work on strengthening the system, particularly the immune system, and the entire functional system of the mind, the body, the emotions. And when we're coming from a healthier state, we tend to not get as sick. And if we do get sick, we tend to heal much more quickly.
Yeah, it's like the old adage that where attention goes, energy flows.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Chinese have a saying. In Chinese, they say the yi leads the qi. E is the mind, the will, the intention. And as your intention goes, that's where your energy will go and flow to as well. Right. And then lastly, the body, being the most dense and thick and heavy, kind of comes along for the ride.
Yeah. And sometimes there's a delayed effect, but it happens, with practice and attention.
And so a lot of what I try to do is to work on these intentions, that, in other words, on consciousness. Mm-hmm. Consciousness is what makes us unique as a species on this planet. And if we can elevate our consciousness to really be holding this holistic, balanced, healthy, positive way of approaching reality, then our energy will be stimulated to do the exact same thing. Because again, remember, the E leads the Chi, the energy follows our intention, and then our body will come along. And then I think that we will see the human body becoming so healthy, it will shock you.
That's great.
Yeah. I think that there's cultures in the world now. There are places, in the old Soviet Union, in Russia and in Okinawa and other places, just pockets of places around the world where people frequently live to be well past 100. 110, 20, 30 even. And of course, if we go back further in history, there were pockets of people who lived to be several hundred years old. Why isn't that possible now? I think it might be. But I think that we need to not be so separate about how we approach health, healing, and well-being. And by really marshaling everything that every culture knows, ancient and modern, will be much better off.
Right. Combining all the things that work from history and from contemporary medicine and things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great approach.
I believe in that 100%.
So do I. I love it. Okay, so now let's talk about the martial arts application a bit. You're a grand martial artist. You teach internal and external Chinese martial arts. Tell us some of the martial arts you've mastered and what the benefits are.
I've studied many, many different martial arts over the years from a lot of different countries around the world. But what I probably do the most, and certainly what I teach the most, are the Chinese martial arts. They tend to be the oldest and also the most holistic. Many martial arts, particularly the more modern ones today, are put together by fighters, people who want to go in the ring. You've seen about, MMA on TV or whatever.
Yeah, they want to conquer.
Yeah, they just want to kind of beat each other up and, maybe win some money or win a trophy or something. And that's fine. But not everybody is interested in that. And frankly, that's not exactly what the world needs right now.
Good point.
Yeah, we need more of something else.
Yeah.
And the ancient traditional martial arts from China, many of the people who were responsible for putting those arts together and elevating the practice of those arts were priests in monasteries. Everybody has heard about the famous Shaolin Temple, which was a Zen Buddhist monastery in China, and there were several of them. And there were also in Wudang and other parts of China, Wudang Mountains, there were Taoist temples, Taoist monasteries. One of my teachers spent 13 years training in a Taoist monastery before he came here. And he actually became the very first person that we know of in the world to teach Qigong, the ancient Chinese method of yoga and internal yoga and meditation to non-Chinese people. And I was there in the very first class, where he revealed that. So I was one of the first non-Chinese in the world to actually learn Qigong. And so the Chinese martial arts, Chinese Kung Fu, which again got its start in a Zen Buddhist monastery. And then the so-called internal martial arts like Tai Chi Chuan, Xingyi, Bagua, these are words that most people, I'm sure, never heard of. But most people have heard, oh, well, good for you.
But you're right.
But most people certainly have heard of Tai Chi.
Right.
And I'm sure maybe many of our listeners have actually maybe studied Tai Chi or seen it in books or seen like travelogues to China, or you'll see people in parks, early in the morning. Hundreds of them. In fact, thousands, literally millions of them across China and Hong Kong and Taiwan get up every morning and go out there at 6, 7, 8 a.m. and spend an hour out there in the good fresh air, warming up, doing stretching, a little breathing exercises, a little moving meditation, and Tai Chi, which actually is a Chinese internal martial art. It actually originally kind of was an offshoot from something that was taught at the Shaolin Temple as Kung Fu. But the founder became a Taoist priest. And what he wanted to do was to shift some of the more external or hard-edged aspects of the art to something that was more flowing, more unitive, more complementary. And that became Tai Chi Chuan. And that's how that art kind of had its roots. And the art really is a way of taking mind and body and breath and energy and combining it as a form of moving meditation when done slowly, or done even still as a quiet seated or standing meditation, or it can actually be speeded up and used as a martial art for self-defense.
And so I noticed that on one of your DVDs that I have, that you have different speed increments that you demonstrate on how it can be performed. It's pretty amazing. Once you speed it up, it looks just like a fighting martial art, but slow. It's very flowing.
Yeah, it's very meditative. And so depending on what you need, if you need like aerobic conditioning, you speed it up. Mm-hmm. If you need it to practice as a martial art, you speed it up.
Right.
But if you need, as most of us do, stress relief, learning how to get along better with your neighbors and your family and your coworkers and so on. Again, as an individual, as a family member, as a worker in a business, certainly as a member of a community, certainly as a member of a city, as a citizen of a state, as a citizen of a nation, as a citizen of a world, we all need to have ways of learning how to interact in a complementary, harmonious way with each other so that we don't step on each other's toes.
Yeah, I know.
And right now, if you look around the world, you see a lot of different cultures and people stepping on each other's toes, so to speak, and there's a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
You step on someone's toe, they may want to get back and step on your toe.
It's a never-ending cycle. Yeah.
It's called blowback. And I think we're getting a lot of blowback right now in society and around the world. And I think that some of these ancient teachings have the potential of showing us how, even in the context of a martial art, a fighting art, if you will, it's possible to do it in a way that actually generates harmony. And that, I think, is one of the powerful lessons of the martial arts, that you can take an ancient practice that was used in warfare at one point and now use it to enhance human communication and human well-being. Mm-hmm. Because my teacher from China, the one who studied at the Taoist monastery for 13 years, the very first class, he said some very interesting things. Number one, he says, I was taking Kung Fu from him. He said, number one, he says, Kung Fu is for your health, because your health is the most precious and important thing that you have. Once you lose your health, you don't have a lot left. Yeah. And you'll spend all your time, energy, and money attempting to get it back. Mm-hmm. But you can't buy it. You can't buy your health. No amount of money will buy your health. And so health, he said, was very important. Two, he said, first you help yourself, then you help the people. See, so there's some social responsibility there too, but we have to have something of true value to offer other people. So that's why we perfect ourselves. We try to get our mentality, our emotional state, our social state, our communication skills, our physical self at a high level of functionality. Then we actually have something to offer other people.
That's great. It's all about attitude as well. And,
yes.
And I published a short ebook, Remedy for Social Disconnect. And it's a little 10-pager. And the reason I did that is because I'm always seeing how, as a culture, Western culture tends to be quite selfish and, everyone to their own, and everyone just wants to be an individual, and it's kind of overemphasized. Yes. And there's where I think the right attitude can really come in handy, because to have something to give people is one thing, but to want to give, and be generous instead of kind of selfish is another thing.
Because the truth is, in spite of all of our apparent differences, underneath all of that, we're all more alike than different. Mm-hmm. We all breathe the same air. We all have the same organs. We have the same heart beating. We have the same brain chemistry. 90% or more of what we are really is very similar to everybody else.
That's true.
And so why all this conflict? That comes from thinking that we are separate from everybody else. Mm-hmm. And that reflects a deep inner split within our own psyche. And so as we heal our own internal psyche, even our own internal wounds, emotional and mental and physical and otherwise, our own historic disconnections, as that becomes healed, then I think we have created space. We've generated the internal capacity then to embrace others. Mm-hmm. And one of my Taoist teachers said that a Taoist is open to surprise. A Taoist is curious. And when you're curious, you want to go learn about other people and what they're about. And then when you learn about other people and see that really they're just like you, then you can approach people with compassion.
Right.
And that is the Taoist path. Through balance and harmony and through acceptance of self and others, to then live a life of peace and harmony with oneself, the environment, nature, and all the other peoples around the world.
Right.
If we could do that, hey, this
We're
world, we're good to go.
So it's seeing that reflection in other people of yourself and seeing the unity, the connection there.
Yes. In fact, one of the kind of dual meditative practices and sometimes psychotherapeutic practices that I often have people do is to actually sit with another person, look them in the eye, and breathe with them. Kind of synchronize your breath with another person. Imagine that, in fact, that you're which is true, that you're really breathing the same air. And then kind of imagine that your space and theirs is kind of overlapping, and you're kind of breathing in the same environment. You'll learn more about that person in 5 minutes than maybe people who have known them for years.
Wow. Yeah.
And you've learned how to connect.
Yeah.
And then if you can do that with one person, just think when you walk down the street and you actually imagine you are breathing with everyone you see walking by, driving by. You go to a restaurant, breathe with everybody in that restaurant. And then extend your consciousness out and breathe with everybody on that block. And then everybody in that city. And then everybody in that state. And then everybody in that country. And then everybody in the world.
Wow.
And that transcends all the artificial barriers that we put into place. And we know from quantum physics that energy is all interconnected throughout the universe. There really is no separation other than the artificial divisions that we've created. In fact, everything that looks solid, like the walls, the door, the desk in here, if you really could see the way it really looks, we just see kind of glowing patterns of light and energy. That's what it really looks like.
Be amazed we're even sitting up right now, right?
I know. What if everybody saw everybody else in the world that way?
Now, it's interesting because we put up these barriers for self-protection.
Yes.
All of us, really. I don't think I've met exceptions.
Yes.
People may try to hide it, but that's what's going on. And so in an exercise like that, I think it's interesting. What would you say would be a way to reassure a person that they can still protect themselves? Because let's say they're sort of breathing in the air of everyone in a restaurant or in a community, and there's a lot of, sick people or negative people or angry people or hurtful people. How do they filter that out?
Well, our ego will not disappear.
Yeah.
At least not in a 3D universe. That's still going to be there. So each person, remember, the first thing, remember I said, number one, first you help yourself. See, so once you have better integrated yourself so that you have a good, stable sense of self, including knowing where your boundaries are, knowing where you end and where other people begin, even though we're going to also recognize the commonalities, in the shared reality, we also have a separate one, because that's how we grow and learn individually. And one of my Hawaiian spiritual teachers says, life is an inside job. Life is an inside job. And the other thing he says that I love is this. He says, have you noticed that whenever there's a problem, you're always there?
Oh, no. Interesting coincidence there.
And so we know we have to work on ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. And that includes having an awareness of how to protect ourselves from negativity, both from the inside and the outside, so that we can link with other people and not have artificial barriers, but yet at the same time not give away our power, to other people.
Right. And there's where the ego serves a good purpose. A lot of
Exactly.
people are like, oh, get rid of the ego, get rid of the ego. And
You have to have an ego.
yeah.
If you don't have an ego, in other words, if you don't have a functional sense of self, you're very disturbed.
Yeah, it's ironic, huh?
Yeah. And so that's what, the Taoist concept of yin and yang is all about, right? Do you need, look at your own hand. You've got a top side and you've got a bottom side. Do you prefer one or the other? No, you need both sides in order to have a whole hand.
That's true.
And it's like magnets, right? You got positive, you have negative, right? We have day, we have night, right? We have high, we have low. We have inside, we have outside. We need all of it, And when you go to extremes and attempt to exclude part of reality, that's where imbalance comes in, and that's where dysfunction typically comes in. And that's on all levels: mental, emotional, physical, energetic. Think about people who say in order to make a lot of money, they burn the candle at both ends. They drive themselves 80, 90, 100, 120 hours a week. They don't get any sleep. They're just grabbing fast food here and there. Now, so they're, you talk about yin and yang, that's extreme yang behavior. Now, after a while, what's going to happen?
Burnout.
This person is going to collapse.
Yeah.
They'll be lucky if they don't have a heart attack, go into cardiac arrest. So that extreme yang behavior led to complete collapse, and they go right to the other side, total yin. Now they can't get out of bed.
Right.
And so if you lead a life with more harmony and balance, then you get the best of both worlds. And I think that's one of the big messages that the Taoists have brought from China here to the United States. Balance, harmony. And to do that, they always watch nature. They always look at Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Because we have seasons of the year, right? We have the spring, the summer, the fall, the winter. So there's natural kind of ups and downs. And as long as things don't go too far out of balance, they go back and they're restored to something that works functionally for the most numbers of people. But if it gets too extreme, like too long a drought, right? It gets too hot, too dry, or the other side, too wet, right? You have tsunamis and you have floods. You see, the extremes are where the problems are.
Right.
But the balanced middle. And so our kind of charge as human beings is to try to create an earth like that, where things are balanced and harmony, and everybody gets their needs met.
Yeah, and to create interactions like that, and it's really sounds like kind of a dance.
Yes.
Because at the same time, you're saying have boundaries and know who you are and where those boundaries are. You don't want to shut things out either. So it's so more like dancing with life and with other people, it sounds like.
Yeah, you take the lead, I follow, then maybe I'll take the lead and you follow, right? And it becomes beautiful. A beautiful interaction.
Yeah, and there's that flow there that's so important too.
Flow is in fact, there's a book in positive psychology. The title of the book is Flow. As a matter of fact, flow. And when you're really into something, you don't even notice the passage of time.
Right.
You could spend hours. Look at a little kid playing, right? They can do it all day, right? They have boundless energy because they're in the flow.
Yeah.
Scientists, right? Writers, poets, musicians, right? Anything creative, once you get into the flow of something that you really love, then you're able to really operate at your peak performance and really produce your best. And time means nothing after a while.
Yes.
Right. And that's something that I really encourage everybody to do, which is find your passion. What are you passionate about that's creative? The most important thing that we as human beings have is imagination in the long run. Just think, if we had no creativity or imagination, we'd still be back in the caves, right? We wouldn't have fire. We wouldn't have anything.
Yeah, true.
And so out of imagination has come these periods of, I mentioned earlier, of Renaissance. Think about someone like Da Vinci, right? When people like that are allowed to move to their highest level of creativity, the entire planet benefits for centuries in many cases. And when it's suppressed, because of, religious intolerance or other types of things, then the entire planet suffers. And right now, I think the entire planet is kind of suffering because I think there's been an excessive attention paid to greed, and so the disparity between the haves and the have-nots has increased to incredible levels. And so you have entire sections of humanity now not getting their needs met and struggling at the lowest level just for survival. There's not any room for creativity and imagination in a context like that.
Right.
And so, the old saying, the rising tide lifts all ships. And so if we contribute to the well-being of everybody on the planet, we all get better. Yeah. And the earth gets better. And the peoples of the earth have more to offer each other.
And it's interesting you say that, because it's also about creating internal space.
Yes.
Within oneself to get out of survival mode.
Yes. Remember, life is an inside job.
Yes, it is.
And remember what my teacher said? First you help yourself, then you can help the people.
Right.
So all the things that I teach at the university and at my institute, my Taoist Institute, are designed to help people learn to help themselves. I love old sayings. You give a person a fish, you fed them for a day, you teach them how to fish. Oh, you fed them for life. Yeah. Very true. Very true.
I love that. It's true.
So everything that I know, everything that you know, everything that we all kind of collectively and individually know, if we share it, then again, everybody benefits.
Right.
So it's about sharing. It's about caring. It's about sharing. It's about being curious about how people think and function, and then through non-judgmental attitudes, accepting people. Because when people feel that you accept them, then they're willing to go the extra mile.
Yeah.
Right? In self-discovery and in interacting with others. If they feel that they're being criticized, judged, limited, then all of that stops.
Yeah, they kind of go into their turtle shell and protect themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as a psychotherapist, of course, I deal with this every day.
Right. Me as well.
Yes, and you too.
Yeah.
Well, you're a licensed therapist as well. And during my training, I spent almost 5 years working in psychiatric inpatient settings, working in psychiatric hospitals with people who were very disturbed, who had many, many psychological and emotional challenges. And so they were my teachers. They're the ones who taught me, how to move to a position of acceptance of others. Because when they had the space to begin exploring more functional ways of being, as opposed to the often dysfunctional ways that they had learned through their genetics, through their biology, through their upbringing, through the abuse they suffered in many cases, once they were able to transcend and see that there was another way, and then through the interpersonal interaction that I had with them, they had the freedom, the space to experiment. And I think that all human beings should approach life as a grand experiment. You're a scientist. I'm a scientist. And what do scientists do? We conduct experiments to see what works.
Right. And if there's, quote, failure, we just see it as a signal for us to alter something about the way we're doing it.
Exactly. It's not a failure at all. As long as you did exactly what you just said, which is learn something.
Exactly.
If you learn, there's no failure. Yeah. And if we could approach all of life like that, oh my goodness, you would not recognize planet Earth.
That's true.
We would have the true Garden of Eden.
Absolutely. And for a lot of people, it's easier said than done.
I know.
And I know that it comes with a lot of these practices. Now, I had the pleasure of being able to receive some of your training at your institute in North Hollywood.
Yes.
And that was wonderful. And what I enjoyed most was the Qigong practice and meditation, the movements. Do you want to say a little bit more about this art and how it differs from Tai Chi?
Qi is the Chinese word for energy. And I think in Chinese medicine, there's something like 25 or 27 different forms of qi that they talk about, as doctors of traditional Chinese medicine. But primarily, qi is the energy that animates and gives life to everything in existence. I mean, the trees have qi, the turtles, the ducks, the birds, the buffalo, and humans, it's this life spark, this life force, if you will. But it needs to be in a certain balance, harmony, in order for it to really work. And so thousands of years ago, the ancient Chinese monks primarily, philosophers and others, and doctors, found out that by controlling the breath and the attention and learning how to really be mindful, right? How to carefully observe the mind, observe the thoughts, observe the images, while synchronizing that with breathing, that one could get a handle on this energy in the body. And if it was out of balance, through mindful attention, one could place it back into balance. Mm-hmm. And by moving your hands to certain parts of your body, in Chinese medicine, the qi, the energy, flows through acupuncture meridians, and it goes from and through and to the different internal organs. And when the organ's energy is out of balance, that leads to disease or impairment. And so they found that by thinking a certain way and moving a certain way and breathing a certain way, that we could interact with and repair those imbalances, so that each person basically becomes their own doctor,
right,
their own healer.
It's through moving improperly on an energetic level that the imbalances occur, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so I've studied, my gosh, I think I actually sat down one day and counted how many different systems of Qigong I know. I think it was 35.
Wow, amazing.
And so what I've done, I call what I teach now the core system, because I've looked at the core of all those different systems of meditation and yoga and Qigong, also all the different systems of martial arts, also all the different systems of healing, or many of them, and all of the different systems within psychology, from psychodynamic to cognitive behavioral to systemic and so on, energetic psychology now. And I've extracted the core essential teachings from each one and put them together in one place. Mm-hmm. That's what I call the core system, because I've tried to extract really the functional heart of each of the systems. And so when someone comes to see me, some people, depending on where they are, again, psychologically, emotionally, socially, communication, and so on, they need a particular approach because certain areas of their life might be working very well, but then others might not be. And so some people need a more behavioral approach because they have habits that impair their life.
Yeah.
Some people need more communication because they don't know how to communicate and relate to others. Some people need to be seen in a group context or a family context because that's where their issues are. Some people, the way they think is out of balance and they need a cognitive approach. Some people have had a lot of trauma and their memories are really what's hurting them. So they need a more psychodynamic approach and go back and to heal some of those old memories. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of that old book and movie, Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. That was the whodunit where everybody did it.
Great.
And so I think that in order to help people really function and heal, we need to recognize that all those theorists were right. Right? The psychoanalyst and the cognitive and the behaviorist and the ones that were in the family systems, they were all correct.
It's all the different levels, right?
Yes, they were just looking at it through a particular lens, and they're all right. Yeah, but yet they like to call the others wrong. No, my approach is right and you're wrong. No, everybody's right. It just depends on what lens are you looking through. But I like to look, of course, at the client and say, okay, what is this client? That's why the first session or two is really an assessment on all those levels. Cognitively, emotionally, behaviorally, socially, communication, physical, energetic. On all of those levels, how is this person functioning? Where are the strengths? And where are the imbalances or the weaknesses? Right. So then I can tailor a comprehensive, holistic approach to make sure that everything that is out of balance is correctly addressed. Mm-hmm. And if I was just using one tool, I couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. The old saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail?
Yeah, that's true. And everything's not a nail. That's the problem, right?
No, everything's not a nail. And neither are human beings. Uh-huh. Human beings cannot help but be holistic.
Yeah.
And at an integrative level, we have to approach them as a holistic being.
Right, because if you just hammer down one nail, then something else can pop up on another
Right.
level because there's still something core that hasn't been addressed.
Right, there's a core imbalance.
Yeah.
So that's why I named it the core system, because that forces me to always view human beings and reality from that perspective.
Now, I have one DVD from your core system. It's primarily the Tai Chi and Qigong movements, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So through those movements, you're bringing all this stuff together.
Yes. Yeah. These
great.
see, and it's very important to have a practice. You know, the Chinese word for that is gong, G-O-N-G. Gong means like work. You know, it's like kung fu, right? It means hard work, actually.
Yeah, I know.
And so, I think I encourage all of my students to put together a practice where every day for at least 100 days, that's usually the length of the gong, you know, this period of time, you're basically going to commit yourself to every day doing these things. Because human beings, we know, are creatures of habit, right? Good habits and bad habits, right? And if we're impaired in any of those levels, we probably have a nice collection of some not so good habits in there that is supporting that level of dysfunction. So what my job is to look at someone, find out where the imbalance is, and then give them the tools that if they do it every day for 100 days, they will have changed their habit. And if you change your habit, you will change your life. If you don't change your habits, your life will be exactly the same next year as it was last year.
Right.
And the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that.
With practice.
Yeah, practice makes perfect. If you are practicing perfectly.
Exactly.
If you're practicing imperfectly, you will become a master of imperfection.
Oh, no. It's good to be aware of that.
Which means your life just won't work.
Yeah, I know.
Certainly not to the extent that it could be working.
Exactly.
And it's all about achieving human potential. Again, I want a renaissance. I want this world to wake up.
Yeah.
You know the Buddha, the word the Buddha means the awakened one. He's just an individual who woke up one day. And we all need to wake up. Because if we wake up, we're going to see the incredible potential that every human being has, and the incredible, wonderful gift of life on this earth. And when everybody is working at a common purpose to lift that to its highest level of functionality, we will not recognize life on this planet any longer.
That'll be a great day.
Yes, and we can do it.
And we can do it.
We can do it.
We're
In
doing
fact,
it right now.
We're doing it right now.
So we're creating this show, and it's going to spread the word. So
Yeah,
and the energy.
We have to create. If you want to live in a paradise, create it.
Yeah.
Create it. Don't wait for someone else to do it. There isn't anyone else. There's only us.
It's just stepping right into it, right?
Yeah, we have to step up to the plate.
This concludes part 1 of the interview with Dr. Carl Totton. You may find more information on his websites, TaoistInstitute.com, drcarltotton.com, and heartofdao.com. Tune in to part 2 of the interview to follow.
Thank you for listening to The Inspire Me Show with hostess Layla Ashley, hypnotherapist, life coach, author, and speaker. Find out more about Layla's services and products at laylaashley.com. The Inspire Me Show is dedicated to bringing passion and inspiration into your life and your relationships. Join Layla on her next episode of this regular program here on KPFK. Until then, live in the spirit of inspiration.